Hi there, and welcome to A Song of Ice and Fire Explained. This is a video series where we explain the massive conspiracies going on in A Song of Ice and Fire. If you haven't seen our previous videos, we suggest watching those first. So let's continue on with Eddard IV, A Game of Thrones. This chapter is 4,770 words long, and is told from the perspective of Eddard Stark, who has the most POV chapters in A Game of Thrones, with 15. In this chapter, immediately upon his arrival in King's Landing, Ned is summoned to a meeting of the small council to plan a tournament. Afterward, Littlefinger intercepts him and leads him to where Catelyn is hiding, where they plan their strategy for justice. Ned arrives in King's Landing tired and ready for a meal and hot bath. Instead, he is immediately informed by the royal steward that there is an urgent meeting of all the small council that he must attend. After momentarily losing his temper, Ned decides it is best not to offend the council on his first day in the capital. Therefore, he tasks his own steward to see that his daughters are guided to their rooms and that Arya is not allowed to go exploring. In borrowed clothes, his are all still packed, Ned arrives to find 4 members of the council waiting for him. Littlefinger, the Master of Coin, Varys, the Master of Whisperers, Renly Baratheon, the Master of Laws, and Grand Maester Pycelle. The simpering eunuch, Varys, immediately expresses sorrow over the troubles on the road and assures Ned they are praying for Prince Joffrey's recovery. Ned coldly informs him that the prince grows stronger every day. When he sees Renly, Ned is struck by how much he looks like a young Robert. Littlefinger immediately quips that Renly is much better dressed, having spent more on clothes than many ladies of the court. Upon introducing himself to Ned for the first time, Littlefinger mentions that Catelyn has most likely mentioned him before. Ned recalls that Littlefinger also knew his brother, Brandon, adding that Brandon mentioned him often, and with some heat. Littlefinger responds that he would have thought heat did not suit the Starks, who are rumoured to be made of ice and to melt south of the neck. Ned replies that he does not plan on melting anytime soon. After a short greeting to Grand Maester Pycelle, Ned asks after the other members of the council, and is told that Stannis Baratheon left for Dragonstone shortly after the king went north, and that both Sir Barristan Selmy and King Robert are still riding through the city. When Ned suggests they wait, Renly explains that Robert finds the detail of coin and crops boring, and rarely bothers to attend. Renly says that the king sent him ahead to convene the council to handle an urgent matter, and produces a sealed letter for Ned. The king's letter contains an order that a tourney be held in honour of Ned's appointment as Hand of the King. Ned is incredulous and not particularly happy with his extravagance being held in his name. The prizes alone total 90,000 gold dragons, and the costs are sure to run high as well. When Pycelle questions whether the treasury will bear the expense, Littlefinger reveals that the crown is already over 6 million gold pieces in debt, half of it to the Lannisters. Ned is shocked. The Targaryens left a treasury overflowing with gold. He cannot believe that Jon Arryn allowed Robert to beggar the realm. But the council explains that while Lord Arryn was a prudent man, Robert did not always listen. Ned insists that this tourney is something the realm cannot afford. "Speak to him as you will," Lord Renly said. "We had still best make our plans." Ned declares that they will consider it later, then leaves abruptly. As Ned proceeds towards the Tower of the Hand, reflecting on the miseries of the last fortnight of the journey south, he is intercepted by Littlefinger, who tells him that he is going the wrong way. After a long journey through the Red Keep, Ned eventually realizes that Littlefinger is not leading him to the tower. Littlefinger explains that he is leading Ned to his wife, but Ned does not believe him. Eventually, Littlefinger brings him outside the castle, where they scale the side of a cliff and mount 2 waiting horses on the other side and ride into the city. Peter leads Ned to a brothel he owns and tells him his wife is waiting inside. Ned is furious at being taken all this way to a brothel and holds a knife to Littlefinger's throat, claiming his brother was too kind. He is interrupted by a man he eventually recognizes as Sir Roderick Castle, disarming his suspicions. Littlefinger leads Ned upstairs to meet with Catelyn, explaining that a brothel is such a good hiding place because it is so unlikely. After embracing and exchanging news with Catelyn, Ned sees the scars on her hands and she places the Valyrian steel dagger used against Bran in his hands. However, Ned cannot understand why Tyrion Lannister would have attempted to murder Bran. Littlefinger states that the reason is obvious and that Tyrion would have never acted alone. Ned tries to assure himself that Robert couldn't have been involved in this. But he remembers all the horrid things that the king has either supported or ignored. Queen Cersei, on the other hand, Ned has no trouble believing to be responsible. Littlefinger reminds him that to accuse either is treason, but if they can find proof of Cersei's involvement, it is possible the king will listen. Ned feels that he should take his case and the dagger directly to the king, but Littlefinger reminds him that there is no solid proof that Tyrion was involved. Then Catelyn explains that she has told Littlefinger about their suspicions concerning Jon Arryn's death, and that Littlefinger has promised to help them learn the truth. When Ned asks how much Varys knows about all of this, he is told that Varys has not been told, but Catelyn warns that he knows things no normal man has any way of knowing. Ned then asks Littlefinger to give him time alone with his wife. Littlefinger asks if they want time in a bedchamber, but Catelyn tells him that will not be necessary. They just need a little time. Catelyn goes to Littlefinger and tells him that she appreciates his efforts and has found a brother that she thought she had lost. Ned is not so confident that Littlefinger can be trusted, but says nothing. After Littlefinger leaves, when the door had closed behind him, Ned turned back to his wife. "Once you are home, send word to Helman Talhart and Galbart Glover under my seal. They are to raise 100 bowmen each and fortify Moat Catelyn. 200 determined archers can hold the neck against an army. Instruct Lord Manderley that he is to strengthen and repair all his defences at White Harbour, and see that they are well manned. And from this day on, I want a careful watch kept over Theon Greyjoy. If there is war, we shall have sore need of his father's fleet." War? The fear was plain on Catelyn's face. Ned tells her it will not come to war, and that Robert will believe him when he finds out the truth. And this is where Eddard IV, A Game of Thrones, ends. Now, when asked to work with Littlefinger, Ned thinks to himself, it would not be the first time that Ned had been forced to make common cause with a man he despised. Fans have tried to speculate who this might be, and if it might be connected to the Tower of Joy. However, it could really be anyone from Roose Bolton to the Lannisters. But it would be interesting if it was connected to Lyanna's "Promise me, Ned" moment. This chapter also introduces Littlefinger's debt scheme, where we think he has deliberately bankrupted the realm and planned for the Iron Bank of Braavos to call in all their outstanding loans so Littlefinger can bail out proud lords like the Waynwoods to secure valuable hostages like Harry the Heir in A Feast for Crows. Because Robert can't possibly be responsible for the amount of debt the crown has accumulated. The Hand's Tourney, which is stated to be ludicrously extravagant, costs 100,000 gold dragons, but the crown is in debt for 6 million dragons. In order to get 6 million in debt in 15 years, Robert would have had to have a tourney level expense every 3 months. And that's assuming the crown has no incomes. We don't know how much these incomes are, but we know that the crown wasn't in debt when Robert took over. Ned says that Aerys left a treasure flowing with gold, and revenues have grown massively in the intervening 15 years. Tywin says crown incomes are now 10 times higher than they were under Aerys. In Tyrion 4, A Storm of Sword. So this begs the question, where did all the money go? Well, the most likely answer is that immediately after Robert's rebellion, there were a lot of expenses, like rebuilding King's Landing, that did strain the crown's resources. Therefore, to solve the problem, Jon Arryn brought in Littlefinger, who he knew was good with money. Once master of coin though, Littlefinger rapidly realized 3 things. First, none of the people above him know or care anything about money, as long as they have enough of it. Second, if he solves the crown's financial problems, he becomes disposable. Third, if he makes the crown's finances look desperate, but still always manages to have enough money, he'll look like an indispensable genius. So, his goal to ensure that the crown's finances are in a state of perpetual crisis, he deliberately borrows money at exorbitant rates to stick the crown with the interest payments. He he increases the crown's payroll as much as possible and auctions off officers. And of course, he steals as much as possible through overcharging, fake identities, double billing, and anything else he can think of. The end result is that the crown is broke. Littlefinger has accumulated a fortune worth millions of dragons, and no one is the wiser. This is supported by Jaime 1, A Feast for Crows, where we learn the crown is employing 20 turnkeys, 6 underjailers, a chief underjailer, a jailer, and a king's justice to guard 6 prisoners. Varys may have known what Littlefinger was doing, but stayed out of it because it fell into his plans to put his chosen Targaryen on the Iron Throne. Anyway, that's about it for Eddard IV, A Game of Thrones. In the next video, we'll cover Tyrion 3 and continue from there. In the meantime, here are some of the differences between the book and TV show. Ned's dialogue in the show is much more engaging. In the books, Lord Commander Barrister Selmy of the Kingsguard is present at the small council meeting, but he is absent in the show. This occurred because the writers didn't want Barristan to know that Jorah was a spy. There is also an additional scene in King's Landing, where Eddard confronts Jaime at the Iron Throne. Jaime describes the scene when he stabbed Aerys II Targaryen. In the books, the badge of the hand that Eddard uses is a clasp at the throat that clutches the cloak together. In the show, it is a brooch on the chest. The saying about the hand is changed as well. In the book, the saying is, "The king eats, the hand takes the shit." In the show, the saying is, "The king shits, and the hand wipes." In the show, Jaime says 500 knights watched both Brandon and Rickard Stark be burned alive. But in Catelyn 7, A Clash of Kings, we only learn of Jaime and Gerald Hightower being present for Aerys' trial by fire. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. If you want to see more of A Song of Ice and Fire Explained, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, when you get the chance, try out Fantasy Flight's A Game of Thrones board game, Digital Edition.